Welcome to Wisdom of the Bible channel. Have you ever wondered about the deep history that lies within the DNA of Middle Eastern peoples? Many people discuss the ancient biblical tribes, but do we really know their true genetic identity? In this video, we will explore the captivating genetic roots of modern Jews, covering three main groups: the Mizrahim, the Ashkenazim, and the Sephardim. Yet, our investigation doesn't end there. We will also examine the genetic ancestry of the ancient Arab tribes that still live in the region, such as the Ishmaelites, descendants of Ishmael, the Edomites, descendants of Esau, the Midianites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, and the Joktanites, descendants of Joktan. Many people ask which modern Jewish communities are genetically closest to the ancient Israelites and how intermarriage affected both Jews and Arabs over the centuries. The answers lie in genetic markers preserved or merged through countless generations. Will science confirm the old narratives or offer surprising findings? Prepare for an illuminating look at the shared secrets of Jewish and Arab DNA. The archaeological sites of Tel Abel, Beth Markah, and Tel Megiddo, all referenced in biblical writings, hold immense importance for archaeogenetic research. Through samples gathered from these sites, we gain a more profound view of the ancient Israelites' genetic identity. These samples lay the groundwork for studying the genetic heritage of earlier peoples and their link to present-day Jewish communities. We've learned that the ancient Israelites descended from at least three main genetic branches that define their DNA, namely the Natufians, Neolithic Anatolians, and Neolithic Iranians. The DNA from these different groups formed the Semitic base observed among numerous Semitic populations, including Jews, Israelites, Arabs, Syrians, and Palestinians. Such breakthroughs are key to reconstructing the region's genetic history in the Bronze Age. They provide a detailed look at how Semitic populations formed and grew, emphasizing the close connections among Middle Eastern groups. By analyzing these genetic components, we can trace migration routes, cultural exchanges, and environmental adaptations that shaped local populations. In short, Tel Abel, Beth Markah, and Tel Megiddo significantly aid our understanding of Semitic genetics and history, building a clearer bridge between the past and modern Jewish communities and their neighbors. Let's begin by focusing on Ashkenazi Jews, commonly called Ashkenazim, or European Jews. This community has long been the center of debates regarding their genetic background. One widely spread yet incorrect notion is that Ashkenazim descend from Turkic tribes or the Khazars, a nomadic group who supposedly adopted Judaism. But this claim has been thoroughly dismissed by scientific and historical investigations. Extensive research and records show that Ashkenazi Jews do indeed trace their lineage back to the ancient Israelites. However, over the centuries, there was some intermarriage with European groups, leaving traces in certain physical traits and genetic signatures. Despite those outside influences, Ashkenazim remain closely linked to their early Jewish heritage. The name Ashkenazi comes from Ashkenaz, an ancestor historically linked with European, mainly Germanic populations. This label soon encompassed Jewish communities in Central and Eastern Europe. Nowadays, Ashkenazi Jews make up a large share of the global Jewish population and are among the primary Jewish groups found in Israel. Although conspiracy theories still emerge, claiming Ashkenazim are Turkic converts rather than authentic Jews, there is no scientific backing for such beliefs. Recent genetic data indicate only about 1.5% of Ashkenazi DNA is connected to Turkic sources. This minor contribution doesn't change their dominant Semitic background, which clearly goes back to the original Israelites. Hence, Ashkenazi Jews illustrate how historical and genetic narratives combine Jewish lineage with European elements. Let's now discuss their ancient Semitic DNA and how it aligns with the Israelites of old. On average, Ashkenazim carry about 39% ancient Israelite Semitic DNA in their overall genetic makeup. That figure, however, can differ individually, reflecting various levels of mixing across Ashkenazi families. A considerable segment of Ashkenazi DNA is European, roughly 57% to 60%, largely due to centuries spent in Central and Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, their Israelite Semitic share is relatively smaller and changes among subgroups. For instance, German Ashkenazim show between 24% and 14% Israelite genetics. Lithuanian Ashkenazim tend to have 29% to 22%. Polish Ashkenazim usually range from 27% to 16%. This data demonstrates that, in spite of extensive European genes, Ashkenazim maintain a notable connection to their ancient Israelite roots. They rank third in terms of direct descent from the ancient Israelites, largely because they exhibit more European admixture compared to certain other Jewish communities. Nevertheless, Ashkenazim clearly possess ancient Semitic DNA, which confirms their ancestral ties to the ancient Israelites. The blending over time is an outcome of a multifaceted history of adaptation and survival across diverse lands, without losing their Jewish identity. Despite genetic variety, Ashkenazi Jews remain an integral part of the continuous story of the Jewish people. Next, let's focus on the Sephardic Jews, who stand second in terms of direct descent from the ancient Israelites. The term Sephardic comes from Sepharad, an old name for the Iberian Peninsula, embracing Spain and Portugal. These Jews mainly settled there but also lived in parts of the Maghreb like Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. Their experiences and migrations reflect an extensive history of interaction with Iberian and North African societies. Sephardim hold a higher portion of ancient Israelite Semitic DNA than Ashkenazim, generally at about 40% to 50%. This underscores their direct and solid bond to the Israelites, placing them among the Jewish groups that preserved a greater share of Semitic genetics. But, like the Ashkenazim, Sephardim also display DNA from other backgrounds. About 27% of their ancestry is Southern European, a testament to their long-lasting ties with peoples of the Iberian Peninsula and nearby Mediterranean lands. In addition, they carry genetic input from the Maghreb, combining Semitic, Berber, and Arab roots, usually varying between 8% and 18%. This mix shows the effects of centuries spent living side by side with North African societies. Interestingly, Sephardim also have roughly 19% DNA from ancient European groups, pointing to older intermarriages with prehistoric European inhabitants. These genetic indications highlight the far-reaching historical links of Sephardic Jews with numerous regions and cultures. Sephardim thus stand second in retaining ancient Israelite genetics, surpassing the Ashkenazim because there was less European merging and stronger preservation of Semitic traits. Both groups still share considerable lineage from the ancient Israelites, backed by evidence of a unified origin despite diverging histories. Sephardic Jews are crucial for safeguarding the cultural and genetic inheritance of the Jewish people. Their DNA reaffirms their connection to the ancient Israelites, while also reflecting the effects of mingling with European and North African groups. Although integration has shaped their genes over time, Sephardim hold a deeply ingrained Jewish identity, both genetically and culturally, ensuring their lasting importance as one of the prominent Jewish clusters in history. Please remember that these details come from studies and genetic surveys of current Jewish populations. Now let's discuss Mizrahi Jews, also known simply as Mizrahim, whose name stems from the Hebrew word Mizrah, meaning east. They include Jews who remained in the Middle East but resided in other locations like Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Research confirms that Mizrahim carry the strongest proportion of ancient Israelite DNA and are thus the closest genetically to the Israelites of the past. Syrian Mizrahi Jews hold about 69% ancient Israelite Semitic DNA, directly linking them to the old Israelites, alongside about 18% mixing with Europeans, which is much less than what Ashkenazi or Sephardic Jews have, plus around 6% Maghrebian DNA, possibly from lesser contacts with North African groups. Iraqi Mizrahi Jews score even higher. Findings show nearly 85.2% of their DNA to be Israelite in origin, making them the most genetically representative of today's Jewish groups. Their continued presence in the Middle East, with limited outside influence, preserved these ancient Israelite links more than among European-based Jews. When comparing Mizrahim to Ashkenazim and Sephardim, it's clear that Middle Eastern Jews hold the greatest share of ancient Israelite genes. This largely reflects their lesser interaction with Europeans and their unbroken presence in the region, the old home of the Jewish people. While Ashkenazim average around 39% and Sephardim range between 40% and 50%, Syrian and Iraqi Mizrahim stand at about 69% and 85.2% respectively. Such results uphold the Mizrahim's role as carriers of Israel's ancestral DNA, though they do have small fractions from Europeans and Maghrebis. Overall, Mizrahi Jews represent the group most genetically linked to the ancient Israelites, reflecting their ongoing history in the Middle East. Though they exhibit certain foreign influences, particularly from Europe and North Africa, their ancient Jewish ancestry remains dominant, outpacing Ashkenazi and Sephardic numbers. For historians, these findings highlight the Mizrahim's essential place in understanding and preserving the heritage of the Jewish nation. It is remarkable that the singular foreign influence in Iraqi Mizrahi DNA stems from age-old Persian and Iranian sources, representing about 14% of their total. This confirms that Iraqi Mizrahim most closely descend from the ancient Israelites. Geneticists fully agree that Iraqi Mizrahim largely match the Bronze Age population of Israel, portraying the most direct line of Israelite heritage. Iranian Mizrahim, or those who resided in Iran, display roughly 38% ancient Israeli Semitic DNA. Yet, they also reflect a bigger share of ancient Iranian backgrounds, about 60%, owing to significant Persian influence over time. Even so, their historic bond with the old Israelites remains evident. The groups reviewed thus far, Ashkenazim, Sephardim, and Mizrahim, are the leading Jewish populations in modern Israel. All derive from ancient Israelites, though their exact proportions differ. Genetic work shows that, through paternal lines, they are closely connected, possessing Semitic lines that go back to the Levant. However, looking at their maternal background reveals that Mizrahi and Sephardic Jews generally maintain a stronger link to the earlier Middle Eastern population than Ashkenazim do. This maternal tie underscores centuries of unbroken lineages among Levantine Jewish communities, highlighting how essential mother's ancestry has been for passing down genetic traits. In essence, research comparing Mizrahi, Sephardic, and Ashkenazi Jews clarifies their shared Israelite roots. Though the degree of Israelite DNA and mixing differs from one group to another, their direct link to the ancient Israelites remains indisputable. Each branch represents a part of this history, strengthening the diversity and legacy of modern Judaism. If you already knew about these findings or wish to learn more, feel free to share your thoughts. Let us now turn to various Arab tribes. First, it's important to correct a frequent misunderstanding regarding Arab identity. Many presume Arabs descend purely from Ishmael. While Ishmael certainly fathered many Arab tribes, he was not the only ancestor. Other ancient figures likewise gave rise to distinct Arab branches, including Esau, Midian, Ammon, Moab, and Joktan. Medieval and ancient Arab scholars were well aware of these distinctions, differentiating between Arabs who came from Ishmael and those who sprang from Joktan and various earlier Semitic lines. Another vital detail is that Arabs belong to the broader Semitic group, the same as Jews, Syrians, Assyrians, Chaldeans, Arameans, and Akkadians. Because of this shared origin, Arabs are genetically close to Israelites and Jews, making them similar peoples both biologically and linguistically. Arabic is part of the same language group as Aramaic and other Semitic tongues, with deep historical use in the area. This cultural and language closeness confirms the extended history that ties these peoples together. Contrary to a common belief, Ishmaelites were not the first Arabs. Long before Ishmael, Abraham's son, there were southern Arabian tribes called Qahtanite Arabs, who descended from Joktan, Qahtan in Arabic, Yoktan in Hebrew. Ancient Arab genealogy distinctly separates Ishmael's line from the southern Arabs of Joktan. This genealogical origin aligns with the Bible's Genesis 10:24-26. And Arphaxad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. To Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and the name of his brother was Joktan. And Joktan fathered Almodad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Hadoram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, the ancestors of the ancient Sabians, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. Because Joktan's lineage settled in southern Arabia, the renowned Sabaeans emerged from among these tribes. Thus, Arab communities were present there earlier, reinforcing the idea that Arab identity arises from several genealogical sources. Over time, Joktan's sons developed into the southern Arab, Qahtani tribes. They inhabited the area well before Ishmael's line, illustrating the diverse sources of Arab origins. The Ishmaelite Arabs sprang from Ishmael, who had 12 sons that became the basis of a significant Arab branch. Still, if we consider the historical timeline, Ishmaelites make up the second big wave of Arab lineage, coming after the Qahtani tribes. Hence, when exploring Arab diversity, we recognize that, apart from Ishmaelites, several families are also known as Arab. This includes Lot's descendants, who formed the Moabites and Ammonites, both acknowledged as part of the Arab world. Lot's children came from an incestuous scenario recounted in Genesis 19:30-38. Further, Abraham had 6 sons through Keturah: Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Midian is the most prominent, and eventually the other tribes under this lineage were also called Midianites. Finally, Genesis 36, starting in verse 15, catalogs 14 Arab tribes from Esau, the Edomites. They were tribal heads by the names Teman, Omar, Zepho, Kenaz, Korah, Gatham, and Amalek, joined by Nath, Zerah, Shammah, Mizah, Jush, Jalon, and another Korah, summing up 14 Edomite tribes. These passages reflect the multifaceted history behind the Arab peoples, branching from several biblical and historical forebears. From now on, I'll spotlight 3 Arab groups in the Middle East that embody this collective heritage. Let's begin with Jordan and the Jordanian Arabs. Biblically, Jordan is located in Edom and also in Uz, known from the story of Job. Through centuries, assorted Semitic groups populated this land, shaping today's Jordanian people. Among the earliest settlers were the Ammonites and Moabites, the descendants of Lot. Later on, 14 Edomite tribes from Esau also settled there, with their genetic imprint continuing among modern Jordanians. In time, the Nabateans, connected to Nebaioth, an Ishmaelite, built a vital society in Petra, further enriching the local Arab gene pool. With this combination, modern Jordan includes the lineage of Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, and Nabateans, linking biblical eras to present times. Research highlights that about 73.2% of Jordanians carry Semitic DNA, originating with the Moabites, Ammonites, and Ishmaelites. Some Jordanians show around 63% ancient Semitic markers, reflecting that same blend of Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, and Ishmaelite forefathers. Alongside Jordan's Arab inhabitants, who hold upwards of 73% ancestry from Ishmaelites, Edomites, Moabites, and Ammonites, Palestinian Arabs exhibit a related pattern. People who identify as Palestinian Arabs share a remarkable genetic lineage with many Semitic groups. Investigations confirm that nearly 73% of Palestinian DNA traces back to the Bronze Age, particularly from diverse Semitic peoples, including Ishmaelites and Edomites, who contributed to their ancestry. This finding underscores the long-term presence of Semitic communities in the region, showing that modern Jordanians and Palestinians largely reflect the biblical populations who lived there ages ago. Often people ask whether Palestinian Arabs descend from the ancient Philistines. My response is yes, but only to a small degree. Studies suggest Philistine heritage makes up roughly 15% of Palestinian genes, while most of their genetic structure stems from Semitic sources. In total, about 73% of Palestinian DNA relates to Ishmaelites, Edomites, and other Semitic lines. Scientists often call this Levant Neolithic Pharma in English. I prefer referring to it as the main branch from Shem because every Semitic population, whether ancient Israelite, present-day Jewish, or Arab, shares aspects of this lineage. Moreover, Palestinians have over half their DNA from Semitic peoples like the Edomites and Ishmaelites. Similarly, Jordanians display a predominantly Semitic heritage from the Edomites, Moabites, and Ammonites. This shows that despite distinct histories, these neighboring Arab groups inherit a strong genetic thread linking them to one another and to the region's oldest civilizations. The story behind Saudi Arabs is also fascinating when analyzed genetically. According to Saudi Arabian Y chromosome diversity and its relationship with nearby regions, about 69% to 75% of Saudis possess Levantine ancestry, the same Semitic roots that form a central part of the region's Arab tribes. Such an outcome matches the biblical view, which states Abraham had 6 sons through Keturah, including Midian, whose descendants settled much of what is modern Saudi Arabia. Additionally, because Saudi Arabia is close to Yemen, many Saudis likely carry Joktanite ancestry. Thus, Midianite lines, Joktan's heritage, and Ishmaelite blood flow together in Saudis, comprising that 69% to 75% Semitic DNA. I hope you enjoyed this summary of Jewish and Arab genetics, along with the ancestral Arab tribes. May God bless you and see you next time.